Look, it's 2026 and let's be real, dropping full price on a game these days can feel like a massive gamble. We've all been burned by the hype train, picking up a AAA title that turns out to be a buggy mess or just a glorified storefront for microtransactions. But today, we are flipping the script. We are looking at the diamonds in the rough. The underrated gems that are genuinely worth every single penny of the asking price. These are the games where you roll credits and the only thing you're thinking is, man, that was a ride. We're talking solid gameplay loops, stories that actually go somewhere, and that rare feeling of total satisfaction without any buyer's remorse. So if you're tired of wasting cash on disappointments, get your wish lists ready. Let's start this list right away. First up, we have Big Helmet Heroes, a title that proves the rumors of couch co-op's death are wildly exaggerated. If you grew up mashing buttons in Castle Crashers, you are going to feel right at home here, but with a gorgeous 3D facelift that honestly looks like a lost DreamWorks movie. The premise is simple. You and a buddy pick from over 20 unlockable knights, and each rocking of them are with a massive helmet, and proceed to smack the absolute daylights out of goblins. What makes this special isn't just the tight beat-em-up mechanics, but the sheer absurdity of the arsenal you find along the way. One minute you're wielding a standard sword, and the next you're bashing baddies with a frying pan or shredding an electric guitar that shoots literal shockwaves. I have to mention the ultimate attacks too, because summoning a stampede of angry sheep to trample a boss never gets old. While some critics wrote it off as just another brawler, the animation quality here is shockingly high for an indie title. It's vibrant, fluid, and packs a surprising amount of personality into every single frame. Sure, you can play it solo, but dragging a friend onto the couch for a few hours of chaotic yelling is where this game justifies every cent of its price tag. It doesn't try to reinvent the wheel, it just makes the wheel really shiny, really fun, and covers it in cartoon violence. If you've been starving for a game that doesn't demand 100 hours of your life but guarantees a good time, this is it. Don't sleep on this one just because it looks cute, it's a chaotic gem. Next up, we're heading to 1980s Texas with Into the Dead, Our Darkest Days. Now, if you recognize that name, you're probably thinking of those Infinite Runner mobile games, but you need to erase that image immediately. This is a full-blown, side-scrolling survival management sim that feels more like This War of Mine had a terrifying baby with State of Decay. You're controlling a group of desperate survivors trying to escape a zombie-overrun Walton City during a blistering heat wave, and let me tell you, the tension is suffocating. The gameplay loop splits between fortifying your shelter and making nerve-wracking scavenging runs where stealth is absolute king. Unlike other zombie games where you mow down hordes, pulling the trigger here feels like a massive mistake because noise draws everything to your location. What really makes this special is the refuge mechanic. You can't just build one super fortress and turtle up forever. You are forced to keep moving from safe house to outrun the encroaching horde, which adds this frantic sense of momentum that most survival games lack. The 2.5D art style is gritty and dripping with atmosphere, capturing that sweaty, desperate 80s horror vibe perfectly. Be warned though, this game is ruthless with its permadeath, meaning if your favorite scavenger makes one wrong move, they are gone for good. It's stressful, it's punishing, and you will probably restart your run a dozen times. But when you finally manage to coordinate a perfect escape with your ragtag crew intact, the payoff is incredible. It's an absolute standout in a crowded genre that proves Pickpock can do serious, deep strategy just as well as arcade action. Now next up, if you enjoyed getting your truck stuck in the mud in Snow Runner, Roadcraft is going to feel like a spiritual awakening, but with way more asphalt. Released back in mid-2025 by Saber Interactive, this isn't just another driving sim where you haul logs from point A to point B. It's a full-blown fix-the-world simulator. You play as a disaster relief contractor, and instead of just fighting the terrain, you are literally reshaping it to rebuild communities devastated by floods and storms. The underrated tag here comes from people dismissing it as just another truck game, but the satisfaction of paving a fresh road, pouring the sand, flattening it with a dozer, and laying the hot asphalt, and then driving your convoy over your own creation is unmatched. They stripped away some of the tedious stuff like fuel management to focus entirely on the physics of construction, and it works beautifully. The swarm engine makes the destruction and debris look incredible, especially when you're clearing a massive landslide with a buddy in co-op. It has this weirdly zen dad game energy where you lose 4 hours just just fixing a single bridge, but the sense of accomplishment is tangible because you see the map change permanently. For the price, you get a massive sandbox of heavy machinery that feels heavy, sounds loud, and scratches that primal itch to build things. It's therapeutic, it's muddy, and it's honestly one of the most rewarding loops I've played in years. Coming in next, we have to talk about Blades of Fire, the title from Mercury Steam that dropped in May of last year and unfortunately got buried under a mountain of mixed reviews. A lot of critics wrote this off as a confused mashup of God of War and Dark Souls, but if you actually dig into it, it's a brilliant, gritty throwback to games like Blade of Darkness. So you play as Arendalira, a warrior tasked with taking down the corrupt Queen Nerea, but the real star here is the forging system. Instead of just looting a better sword, you are constantly using your sacred hammer to physically craft your own arsenal from the divine metal you scavenge. The combat is incredibly tactical. You aren't just flailing around, you're targeting specific body parts, slashing at an unarmored leg or bludgeoning a helmeted head, while your scholar companion Adso shouts out enemy weaknesses he's analyzed. It creates this frantic, cerebral rhythm where you have to think like a blacksmith and a duelist in the middle of a fight. I also have to shout out the art style, which ignores the trend of hyperrealism for this colorful, dark fairy tale aesthetic that looks like a moving illustration. The reason it's on this list, though, is how it handles exploration. There are no magical floating waypoints telling you where to go. You have to actually listen to Adso and use your intuition to navigate the maze-like palaces, which feels intimidating at first but becomes immensely rewarding once it clicks. It was definitely a commercial stumble for 505 games, but now that the dust has settled, it stands out as one of the most unique, uncompromising action adventures on the PS5 and Series X. If you want a game that respects your intelligence and lets you smash things with a hammer you built yourself, this is 100% worth the dive. Next up, so if you've been missing that pure, unadulterated chaos of old-school vehicular combat games, Deliver at All Costs is going to be your new obsession. Released late last year by the folks at Studio Far Out Games, this is basically what happens when you mix Crazy Taxi with a 1950s B-movie and crank the destruction physics up to 11. You play as Winston Green, a courier with a bad attitude and an even worse driving record, tasked with delivering everything from giant marlins to ticking time bombs. The isometric camera gives it this nostalgic arcade feel, but don't let the perspective fool you. The technology under the hood is wild. Almost every single building, fence, and pedestrian in the city of St. John's is fully destructible, meaning you can and will drive straight through a shopping mall to shave 3 seconds off your time. It's hilarious to watch the world crumble around you as rock and roll blasts from the radio, turning a simple delivery into a disaster movie scene. The story is surprisingly engaging too, filled with bizarre characters and a mystery that gives you a reason to keep wrecking the town. People slept on this because it looked a bit quirky, but the sheer satisfaction of the driving mechanics makes it worth the full price of admission alone. It doesn't take itself too seriously, which is exactly why it works so well as a palate cleanser between massive 100-hour RPGs. The way the car handles the weight of different cargo adds a surprising layer of strategy to the madness, too. It's vibrant, it's loud, and it lets you topple a statue with a station wagon, which is really all I ask for in a video game. Definitely grab this if you need to blow off some steam. Coming in next, Lost Soul Aside is practically legendary for its development cycle, starting as a solo project that looked better than Final Fantasy XV. And finally dropping last year to prove it wasn't vaporware. It's easy to be skeptical of games that bake in the oven for a decade, but this title absolutely sticks the landing by delivering arguably the most stylish combat system of the generation. It acts like a love letter to the character action genre, blending the technical combo depth of Devil May Cry with the floating, ethereal movement of Kingdom Hearts. The star of the show is your companion, Kaiser, a crystal dragon that instantly morphs into whatever weapon you need, swords, hammers, or even wings for traversal. This mechanic creates a fluid combat dance where you aren't just memorizing inputs, but literally flowing like water around enemies in a shower of particle effects. Visually, it is stunning, with an art direction that manages to be distinct despite its obvious inspirations. What makes it special and arguably underrated is that it retained that singular, focused vision of a passion project despite growing into a massive production with Sony's backing. It doesn't bloat itself with unnecessary open-world filler or live service nonsense. It knows it's a high-octane action game and sticks to that lane religiously. The boss fights are pure spectacles that feel like anime season finales, demanding you master that crunchy parry mechanic or die trying. Some people definitely forgot about this title because of the wait, but playing it now feels like unearthing a time capsule from a golden age of action games, polished to a mirror sheen. It's fast, it's flashy, and it respects your time by giving you pure adrenaline from start to finish. If you want to feel incredibly cool while holding a controller, this is a non-negotiable purchase. Now, if you have ever watched The Nightmare Before Christmas and wished you could literally step inside the screen, The Midnight Walk is about to blow your mind. From the twisted minds at Moonhood, and the same geniuses who gave us Lost in Random, this game is a masterclass in dark fantasy that feels handcrafted because, well, it actually is. Every single asset in this world was physically sculpted out of clay, 3D scanned, and then animated in a way that retains that jerky, tactile stop-motion imperfection. You play as the Burnt One, a little creature who digs themselves out of a grave and has to guide a sentient lantern named Potboy through a truly unsettling world. The atmosphere is thick enough to cut with a knife. It's this beautiful mix of grotesque monsters and oddly cozy, flickering lighting. It launched back in mid-2025 and frankly didn't get enough noise. Probably because people assumed it was just a visual gimmick, but the gameplay actually holds up. You're mostly focusing on exploration and puzzle solving, using your lantern's flame to ward off creatures that want to drag you into the dark. If you happen to have a PSVR 2 Gathering Dust, this is the killer app you've been waiting for because staring these clay monsters in the face is a whole different level of terrifying. But even on a flat screen, the texture work is so good you can practically see the fingerprints on the models. It's one of those vibe games that doesn't demand twitch reflexes, but instead asks you to just exist in its weird, melancholy universe for a while. The sound design deserves a special shout out too, with creaking wood and squelching mud that make your skin crawl in the best way possible. It's rare to find a game that commits this hard to a specific art style without compromising on the actual fun factor. Buying this at full price feels like supporting an art gallery that also happens to let you fight nightmare fuel. It is short, sweet, and incredibly memorable, offering a palate cleanser from all the hyper-realistic shooters out there. Trust me, you have never played anything that looks quite like this, and that novelty alone is worth the entry fee. Coming in next, Metal Eden is what happens when you take the sheer ferocity of Doom Eternal, mix it with the parkour of Ghost Runner, and let the developers of Ruiner turn the visual dials up to 11. You play as Asuka, a hyper-agile android in the monolithic city of Moebius, and honestly, the plot about saving human consciousness is total nonsense you can safely ignore. The real reason you're here is the core mechanic, which lets you telekinetically rip the mechanical hearts straight out of enemies mid-combat. It is violently satisfying every single time, giving you a split second to decide whether to crush that core for health or hurl it like a grenade to clear a room. The movement is just as aggressive. You aren't just sprinting, you are wall running, grappling, and jetpacking around arenas that feel like futuristic skate parks made for murder. And there is even a ball mode that lets you morph into a sphere to ram enemies, which feels like a bizarre but welcome nod to Metroid Prime if Samus had absolutely zero chill. Critics were a bit harsh on the cheesy dialogue when it launched, but they completely missed the point. This game isn't trying to be high art, it's trying to be high adrenaline. The weapon feedback is crunchy and heavy, especially the shotgun, which might just be one of the best boomsticks released in the last 5 years. It demands a flow state that few games achieve, punishing you the second you stop moving and rewarding you for playing like a speedrunner. Sure, it's a linear corridor shooter in an era of open worlds, but that focus allows every encounter to be a perfectly paced combat puzzle. If you need a game that respects the fact that you just want to blow robots up in style, Metal Eden delivers that experience with zero filler. It is frantic, neon-soaked chaos that makes you feel like an unstoppable god of destruction, and that feeling is worth every penny. Next up, RoboCop Rogue City Unfinished Business is technically a standalone expansion. Taeyeon basically looked at the original game, saw that we all just wanted to shoot bad guys in the face with an Auto 9, and gave us a tighter, more focused 10-hour serving of exactly that. The setup here is that you are clearing out the Omni Tower, a massive housing complex overrun by elite mercenaries, which turns the game into this claustrophobic, die-hard style ascent. The big hook this time around is the variety. You actually get to play flashback missions as human Alex Murphy, and there is a ridiculous segment where you pilot an ED-209 that is worth the price of admission alone. They also added a cryo cannon that lets you freeze enemies and shatter them like glass, which feels like a direct nod to old-school shooters like Duke Nukem. It's definitely more of the same, but when the core loop is this satisfyingly violent, that is not a complaint. The satire is still razor-sharp, with deadpan humor and environmental storytelling that perfectly captures that Paul Verhoeven grit. It's significantly cheaper than a full AAA release, making it one of the best bang-for-your-buck action titles of the last year. If you skipped it because you thought it was just a throwaway DLC, go back and correct that mistake. It's bloody, it's loud, and it lets you crush a mercenary's skull against a vending machine. I'd buy that for $1 or, the actual retail price. Next on the list, you might have heard the mixed chatter around solo leveling Arise Overdrive when it dropped, but I think most of that noise missed the bigger picture. This is a fascinating experiment where Netmarble took their massive free-to-play gacha hit, ripped out the predatory gambling mechanics, and sold it to us as a complete standalone package for $40. If you love the anime or the webtoon but hated the idea of swiping your credit card to unlock characters, this is the version you have been begging for. You play as Sung Jinwoo, growing from the world's weakest hunter to the Shadow Monarch, and instead of praying to RNG gods, you actually earn your weapons and hunters through pure gameplay. The combat has been tweaked with new overdrive mechanics that add some serious flash to the hack-and-slash loop, and for the first time you can actually team up for 4-player co-op raids. Yes, the grind is still very real. They basically replace the money walls with time walls, so expect to spend hours hunting monsters to craft that perfect gear. It definitely has some jank, with menus that sometimes stutter and a camera that hates tight corners, which is why critics gave it a hard time. But there is something incredibly refreshing about paying a one-time fee and knowing that every cool skin and powerful Shadow Soldier is something you can unlock just by playing the game. With the console versions finally hitting PS5 and Xbox later this year, it's the perfect time to jump in and power level without the fear of bankruptcy. It's a raw power fantasy that respects your wallet, if not entirely your free time, and that is a trade-off I'm willing to make.